Hi there, this is Christian Hudson, and I want to say thank you for joining me here, and just as importantly, thank you so much for all of your feedback on the last video that I posted. We had no idea it would generate the response that it did, that as many people would be telling their friends about it as have been. As of right now, as I sit down to record this, about 8,000 people have seen it. And we've gotten about 125 comments, I think, when last I checked, and just over 500 emails that were sent in to me as well. So this is like mind-boggling because we've been kind of a little bit smaller, the Social Man as a company and as a brand. So for all these people to be talking about it is really cool for me, and it's really just heartwarming for me as well. We love helping guys out. And based on the feedback that we saw, a lot of guys were reading that stuff, listening to it, going out, putting it to practice, and actually getting good results with it. So thank you for all the good responsiveness. I'm going to give you a really cool technique today, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But before I do, I also want to mention that I'd say about 250, 300 of the emails that we received had nothing to do with the actual video. They're from other people writing in saying, hey, I read through your website, and looks like you guys really know what you're talking about. Here's my question. And the question would be about a girl or about a specific situation the guy was in. If you want to get those answered, obviously we do coaching, but that's not what this is all about. We actually do once a day, when we can, we try to do once a day video blogging on our main website at thesocialman.com, where we do feedback and interactivity with people like you. So if you do have a question, send it into TSM, that's like The Social Man, tsmquestions@gmail.com. It'll get loaded up into the mailbag, and myself or somebody else who I work with will respond to it. It's obviously all anonymous. We're not going to use your real name. We're not going to use your email address. But if you do have a question that's not related to this particular video or the previous one, send it in there, and we'll be happy to answer it on the blog. Now, back to what we're going to talk about today. One of the most common things that I saw in both the questions people were writing to me as well as the comments on the blog was, all right, well, this investment is all well and good, but how do I get a conversation going? How do I build commonalities with a woman? How do I build attraction with her? So it's funny because I wish you could sit where I sat and see all the questions that come in. They're almost universally one of two type. It's like, how do I start a conversation? Or they're like, I'm in this situation with this girl right now. What do I do? Like almost always, it's like, how do I start it, or what do I do now that I'm in it? It's never like in the middle, like, how do I build rapport, how do I build chemistry? So as I said, we're already dealing with that second part. Once you're in a situation, just send in your questions to that other email address. Now, as for how you create commonalities with a woman and build attraction with her, there's a really cool technique that the New York Naturals taught me, or more importantly, I should say, that I intuited from watching one of them. This is something that one of them always did, and it was always really smooth. He would do it at bars, he would do it at clubs, he would do it at cocktail parties. So it was really a versatile way to get a conversation going with the girl, and he would just start with the most meaningless stuff. If you're like me, you don't like using routines to start conversations. If you're like me, you'd like for your own personality and your own life to be expressed in your interactions with women. And if you're like me, you also don't have to overthink stuff. So this little technique solves all of those problems, and I'm going to teach it to you in just a moment. The one thing that I will say about just about everything that they taught me, and this is another thing that came up on the blog with respect to implied investment, is that it all comes from a place of core confidence. And it comes from a place of really knowing who you are and really knowing that when you walk up and you present yourself to a woman, you're, for lack of a better word, you're a badass. You're the Google of the stock market. You're the Goldman Sachs of Wall Street. You're just an awesome guy. And a lot of the stuff that I got from hanging out with these guys was not just these techniques that I'm giving you. These are like, if you think of the iceberg metaphor, like the Titanic, these are like just the tip of the surface. And everything, a lot of what I learned from these guys was the rest of the iceberg, and seeing the stuff that's sort of hidden and seeing the places where they were coming from, so that eventually I started creating some of my own techniques, and a lot of my own personality was what was actually creating attraction with women. So I don't want to skip over that. I don't want you to think that just because we're learning techniques now that these are sort of the be-all end-all. These are some building blocks, but the really important stuff is what you don't see. It's the stuff beneath the surface, and that's really the benefit of what I got from those guys. In any case, moving on and giving you the technique that is pretty awesome for getting conversations going. I'm going to tell you how it would go in a conversation first, and then I'm going to break it down for you. So here's how it would go. I would start with a little story about myself. It wouldn't be crazy. It wouldn't be really long. It'd be some sort of cool story about something that I've done. In my case, the story that I'm going to use is about this trip that I took to Mexico. So this was last year. This is a crazy story. It was a Sunday night. I was doing shots of tequila with a couple friends. We got pretty hammered. We ended up going to karaoke, and around 2:30 a.m., somebody said, hey, let's go to Mexico right now. So we went home, we got our passports. We were still drunk in the cab on the way to JFK, but sure enough, we bought tickets right then and there to Cancun, and we ended up on the beach for a week. So it was an awesome story. It was really spontaneous. I actually ended up in Psychology Today for it, so that was like a fun little side bonus there. But that's the story that I might lead off with. Now, I'm going to tell you how I would get to that story in just a second, because I can literally start a conversation from zero and be at that story within about a minute. But I'll tell you how to do that in just a second. So let's just say that I'm talking with a girl, and I'm going to say something like man, this weather's just been terrible. Like, when's the last tropical vacation you took? And so she's going to tell me, and she'll open up a little bit, and then she'll probably ask me, well, how about yourself? This is just reciprocity. If girls aren't asking, if you ask a question to them and they're not asking you how about yourself, then I'm just going to tell you flatly, it's not a technique issue. It's your body language, it's your delivery, it's something in your nonverbals that's messing it up. But if you're approaching with decent body language, if you're just asking some basic questions, girls will reciprocate and they'll ask you how about yourself. So so here I am, I'm talking to a girl, and I'm saying, when's the last tropical vacation you took? And she's going to tell me, and then I'm going to say, and then she's going to ask me when's the last one I took. I'm going to say, well, geez, it was probably it was about 8 months, a year ago at this point. It's a crazy drunken trip to Mexico. Literally, we were hanging out on a Sunday night at karaoke, and next thing we knew, we were in a car on the way to the airport, and we ended up in Mexico. So that's the first part of it. And she's going to say, wait, what? So here's the really critical point, is I'm not just running off and telling a story. I'm kind of teasing her a little bit. I'm doing what we would call baiting her. And I'm throwing out just a little bit of bait. Yeah, it was about 8 months ago. Crazy drunken night. Got really hammered at karaoke and ended up in Mexico. So again, I'm not giving her everything. I'm just giving her a little bit of the information right there. So that's going to prompt her to invest a little bit. She's going to have to ask another question and work a little bit more for me. She's going to say, wait, you got drunk and ended up in Mexico? I'm going to say, yeah, what, it's never happened to you? So this is like a little tease, right? You've never gotten drunk and ended up in Mexico? Whatever. And she's going to laugh, and then she's going to say, well, wait, so what happened? So I'll tell her just a little bit of the story, and I'll probably tell her with about as much depth as I just told you right now. I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to tell her about every single thing that happened there every day, about the chorizo we ate for breakfast. It's all about conveying just enough of the story to get her comfortable opening up to me and thinking, oh, this guy's life is kind of cool. So here's the key point then. When I finish the story, I'm going to say something yeah, it was the most spontaneous thing I've ever done in my life. I never thought that was in me, but hey, there it is. How about you? What's something spontaneous you've done? So this is the second step of it, right? The first step was kind of telling the story, baiting a little bit, and then telling the story, letting her interact with you a little bit. And then you're going to say, how about you? What's something spontaneous you've done? Now, here's why this starts to become important, is because rather than talking about tropical vacations, where maybe the last tropical vacation she took was with her mom and dad, and that wasn't very spontaneous, and you guys don't have a whole lot to connect on there, now you're connecting on something that your personalities are in, let's call it similarity to. I'm doing something spontaneous. Now I want her to tell me about something spontaneous she's done. So it doesn't have to be a tropical vacation. It could be about the time she went whitewater rafting in the Grand Canyon, or the time that she, got up on stage at a concert and stage dove. It could be anything. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we're talking. I'm like, so what's the last spontaneous thing you've done? And she could say something like, she could say, the last girl I talked to about this, she said, oh, geez, let me think. Well, and this was this is kind of a funny story. She's like, well, the last really spontaneous thing I did, we were all hanging out one night. It was like girls' night at my house, and we were all just in our pajamas, and we were all sitting around. We were just drinking wine, and it was really snowy, and we decided to run outside and have a snowball fight. And I was like, like, I'm sure that you would have the same response. Just like, oh my God, that's incredible. That is like so cool. That's really spontaneous. So wait, you were just like outside in your pajamas having a snowball fight? And she's like, yeah, we were really drunk. It was like really fun. I'm like, oh, that is incredible. I kind of want to do that. And so she laughed, and I go, okay, so here's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to be semi-spontaneous here. We're going to pack up a bunch of snow, and we're going to make a bunch of snowballs, and we're going to get really drunk, and we're going to fly down to Mexico and have a snowball fight on the beach. Deal? And she's like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. I've never had a snowball fight on the beach before. I was like, me neither. We can have one together. You're going to have to make the snowballs. So I'm moving kind of quick there, but that's basically the third step of it, okay? So just to go through the steps again, the first step is I tell a little story about myself. I end it by talking about the personality trait and saying that's the most X thing I've ever done. Spontaneous, adventurous, crazy, fun, open, loyal, whatever. So I'm going to finish with that personality trait. Then I'm going to say, so how about you? What's the most X thing that you've ever done? And she's going to tell me. I'm going to let her talk about it for a little bit. I don't want to just jump ahead to step 3. The whole point of this is to get her comfortable opening up to me, sharing. And there's even a whole lot of little nuances that you can do in that step 2. In terms of teasing her, having fun with her, pushing her away a little bit, pulling her back in. But, we won't get into those nuances here. And then step 3 is basically future projecting. Now, this is sort of an old technique, but it's a new technique in the way that you're combining your 2 stories and you're putting the 2 of you together into a future reality. So it's really fun. You take what you've done, getting drunk and going to Mexico or whatever spontaneous thing you've done. You take the thing that she did, which is, a snowball fight in her pajamas, and you combine them together and you say, we're going to be like the most spontaneous couple in the world. We're going to throw snowballs at each other on the beach, but you get to pack the snowballs. So now you're starting to get her to do the work, and that's the sort of implied investment part. You're the one who's going to have to put the snowballs together. She's, I have to put the snowballs together. Well, look, I'm the one who's got to get us drunk and get us down to Mexico. That's a little bit of work here, okay? You want to do a shot? So, that's kind of where you could go from there. I probably wouldn't add in the do you want to do a shot unless you were at a college bar. But that is a technique in a nutshell. It's very easy, and all it depends on is for you to do a little bit of work right now. The thing that you have to do is you have to figure out what is it that you want to screen a girl on. What sort of personality traits do you want to find out about her? And in the very beginnings of conversation, you're not going to I kind of joked earlier, I was like, it's the most loyal thing I ever did. You're probably not going to talk about loyalty and really deep topics. In the intro stages of conversation, you're going to talk about fun things. And this is another thing that I learned from the New York Naturals is, if you think about typical methods in the pickup community, the method for picking up a girl is based on step 1, step 2, step 3. The way that these guys sort of do it, it's a little more nuanced, but they basically look at, the vibe of the interaction. Is it fun? Is it flirty? Is it deep? Is it intimate? So you could actually enter a really intimate vibe with a girl really quickly if you're able to sense that and sense that she's there. Again, that's a little bit more advanced. That's not for the sake of this video. But what we're talking about right now is basically screening a girl on some fun personality trait that she has. So think of words like spontaneous, adventurous, crazy, fun, wild, lighthearted. So what's a personality trait that you want in a girl? Figure that out. And then also figure out a story or a time in your life that you've done something like that. If you've never done something like that, then I'm going to tell you right now, for heck's sake, go out and do something like that, okay? Your life is passing you by if you haven't. So go out and do something fun, spontaneous. Whatever trait you want in a girl, go out and do it yourself. If you have done it, then great, you've already got a story good to go. Now, the last thing I was going to tell you here is how to actually start a conversation and get to that point in the story. So you could be there within a minute or less if you really want to. And let's say that you start talking to a girl and it's really cold outside. This is a really easy way to start a conversation. You're going to walk up. You're at a bar. You're at a party. You're going to walk up to a girl. You're going to be nearby her. Maybe catch her eye contact. There's a whole lot of nonverbal stuff that you can do to sort of initiate the conversation. Catch her eye. Just be like, man, it's just wickedly cold outside. And she's going to be like, yeah, I know. It's so cold. And be like, God, I just wish I was in the tropics right now. And she'd be like, yeah, I know. And it's like, so, when's the last time you had a tropical vacation? Now, there you are. Literally 3 sentences, you're in it. And this goes into another theory that I learned from these New York Natural guys, which is the depth of conversations, whether they're topical, personal, or interpersonal. I'll just give you a little glimpse of that right now. Basically, a topical conversation is talking about a topic like a table, right? Or a vacation. Personal conversation is talking about you or her. Interpersonal conversation is talking about you and her. So what this little technique that I just taught you does, is it gets the conversation interpersonal really quickly. It gets you guys talking about you and her on a beach together, throwing snowballs. It gets it interpersonal very quickly. That's how you build that connection. That's how you start to create that attraction, is she starts to see this image in her mind of the two of you on a beach throwing snowballs. It's absolutely absurd. It has, no basis in reality. But here's this fun guy who's talking about it, 3 minutes into a conversation with her, 4 minutes into a conversation with her. She knows this really cool story about his life, but he wasn't trying to DHV. He's just talking about who he is. And he knows this cool story about her. So you guys have this great connection within 3, 4, 5 minutes. And now you can start to work everything else that I already talked about with respect to the implied investment. So I hope that this sort of answers that question of how do I get conversations going. And, again, it can be something as simple as man, it's so cold outside. Or, hey, if it's warm outside, you can be like, man, it's really warm outside right now. I feel like I'm in Mexico. And there you go. So think about how this fits into your life. That's the most important thing. I can't do all the work for you, but I promise you that if you go out, if you try this technique, if you have some decent body language and some decent nonverbals, it's going to work for you and it's going to get conversations going. And it works. Even if you don't do this in your pickups, so to speak, it's a great way to start a date. It's a great way to just get dates off on a really fun note. So you can do this at any point when you're trying to really get conversations going and get them interpersonal. That's the real key point of it. And again, this is stuff that I learned from these guys just from watching them. This particular technique was just something I saw this guy do again and again and again. He would kind of tell 1 or 2 or 3 stories, and he'd always figure out a way to get into them within a few minutes. And, and then all of a sudden he's leaning back up against the wall, and she's talking to him. She's like, oh my God, I want to go throw snowballs in Mexico, or whatever it was that she was saying. And, he's just laughing. He's having fun. He's like, all right, but, you got to pack the snowballs. This stuff doesn't come free. I got to get you drunk first. So, again, I'm sure you can imagine yourself doing this because it's really fun. It's really easy to do, and I hope you like it. I only ask one thing from you, which is that you leave a comment on the blog and you tell me if you've ever done something like this. You tell me if this sort of thing works for you, if you go out and you do it. I love to do coaching. I love to interact with guys. My day rates are kind of high, so I don't always get the chance to, be exposed to a lot of people, in a close way. But I read every single comment on the blog posts. I'm responding to them. Nick and Race are responding to them. There's some guys I work with. So we're really excited to see how this stuff works for you, and we've got some more coming for you. So again, thank you for tuning in. Can't wait to hear how this works for you, and we'll catch you very soon.